JD PicKell with us here from On3. You a Bad Bunny guy, or just that one was hit the right note?
It's just hitting, man. It's Feel Good Friday. Like the vibes are high. Last Friday before some college football. I mean, I was not expecting to have that kind of beat playing in my ear, but I loved it, man. I'm happy to be on with you.
Well, thanks for joining us, man. It was great to get to know you a little bit there in Nashville when we were doing SEC Media Days. I do want to start things off with this video you did because it was great. I watched it, and I think I learned quite a bit. What do you think the A&M offense is going to look like? Because a lot of it has been like, well, Bobby's done this, but he's also done that, and he's done this, and he's done that, but now he's got all this talent. You kind of try to sum it up in what you think he's trying to put into work.
Yeah, it's a bit of a guessing game at this point, obviously. So we're kind of trying to piece together what Bobby Petrino has done over the years. And I think when you put it down into like categories, I could say he's going to stick to that principle of we're going to feed the studs, right? Which if you're an A&M fan, that's obviously music to your ears. We're going to get the football to our best players. Now, how we do that, that's probably going to vary, whether it's running the football and getting downhill, or whether it's running some shallow crossing patterns to have an all coverage beater, or whatever it looks like. We're getting the ball to our best players. And I think one of the most indicative stats last year for Texas A&M's offense, they were pretty unbalanced. Like they were 46% run to pass, which is 99th in the country in terms of how frequently they ran the football. And so if you're a Texas A&M fan, saying, okay, we're not being balanced, that doesn't sound good. But what does that actually mean? When you're not balanced, it means a couple of things. It means, one, the defense is able to kind of key on some tendencies that you're starting to tip your hand a little bit as an offense. The other part is, if you're unbalanced, you're probably not feeding the studs like Bobby Petrino wants to. You're probably not involving the maximized potential of what your skill players could equate to. So I think as a whole, I expect a lot more hands to touch the football a lot more frequently. And I think you'll see the Texas A&M offense as a whole kind of dictate terms to defenses when they play. And it won't be like, hey, we're taking away Evan Stewart. What are you going to do about it? I think Bobby Petrino will say, okay, well, we're scheming up different things to for sure get the ball to Evan Stewart, and that's how we're going to roll each and every Saturday. So I think it'll be a lot more definitive and a lot more of a complete identity when I look at what Texas A&M is going to be in 2023.
So you mentioned 46% running, that it isn't balanced. So what is balanced, 50-50 in your eyes, or you just want to have the bigger number on the run game?
Yeah, I think you just want to see a little bit bigger of a number, because I think if they were somewhere in the range of like even 48%, you say, okay, we're able to be a little bit more structured in how we're approaching this, because 46% tells me that they were just trying to get the ball out and about, out in space. And it also tells you probably didn't have what you needed on that offensive line to be able to be successful last year, or you weren't getting the looks, or whatever it comes down to. The offensive line wasn't getting it done. So you were probably in a lot of 3rd and long, 3rd and 7 to 10 kind of situations. So some of it's winning on 1st and 2nd down and being able to have that number higher. So I think ultimately what it's going to be is getting the ball to playmakers and setting up more favorable 2nd down, 3rd down. So we don't have to have a 3rd and long where we have to throw the football and put our quarterback in an unideal situation.
JD, one of the things that I took away from your video, too, is that you don't expect this offense to let things develop per se. Like, it's going to be quick. Like, Connor or Max, whoever it is going to have to make quicker decisions. Kind of explain that portion of it, of how quick you think it's going to move.
Yeah, I think when you look at Bobby Petrino's offense over the past couple of years, and really what he did at Missouri State last year was the power spread kind of offense, which, to put it most simply, in the spread offense, obviously you're spreading the receivers out and you're trying to create matchups. And so when you have matchups and you have one-on-one, typically those things kind of develop a little bit more quickly. Like it's not going to be a lot of 5 steps, hitch up, kind of look downfield. It's catch the ball. He gets open because he has a matchup he likes. He wins it right away. We're getting the football to him. So a lot of that will be pre-snap. But I think, yeah, exactly to your point, they're trying to get the football out in space, quick, fast, in a hurry. They're not wanting it to be this big, long situation where it's like I just said, we have to go to our 1st, 2nd, 3rd read. It's we already know by the way that we're lining up, by nature of how we are putting the defense in a bind pre-snap, we're going to be able to get the football to who we want to get it to. And we know that before the play even starts. And so I think that's going to do wonders for Connor Wegman. And going back to the whole conversation around balance and the way that they want to attack the defense, like it kind of goes hand in hand. If you get what you want pre-snap and you know what you're looking at as a quarterback, and you can have that 5-yard out route or whatever it ends up being, or you have that width hitch, whatever it ends up being, and you can make good on that, then you're lining up in 2nd and 5, and the picture looks a whole lot different than if you're lining up in 2nd and 10.
JD, a lot has been made, not a lot, but when people worry about the Petrino offense, they're like, but he didn't really do much at Missouri State that last year. Have you been able to watch any of that film and determine the why, or is it, I think the year prior they were really, really good. So what have you seen on film?
Yeah, I think some of it too is what you were limited with at the quarterback position. They had a really good quarterback in terms of what he did with his legs. He wasn't always the most dynamic downfield, but I mean, David, I looked at the game against Arkansas and I saw the way that they were able to continually execute and continue to just set up favorable situations. It wasn't like a quick strike offense. And I think some of it too is Missouri State. The personnel you have there is going to be very different than somewhere at Texas A&M. So I think when you look at Bobby Petrino, I wouldn't be overly concerned about the most recent sample size. I would look more at the body of work and say, okay, what have we seen from this guy over the course of his career? I think the return there is for the most part pretty solid.
You referenced earlier the power read scheme. Kind of explain to us why that might be such a good option for Connor.
Yeah, I think I like the sense that it's going to. I guess there's two parts of it. We kind of explained that spread offense side of it, which I'm sure Texas A&M fans are familiar with. That's fairly basic in the broad philosophy. Not that it's a basic offense by any stretch. But the power part of it is kind of what I want to hone in on. Typically, when you are lining up in that spread offense, a lot of teams will run a zone scheme where the linemen are blocking an area more or less than they're blocking a man. And in a power run scheme, everybody has someone they're supposed to block to a man, not just an area. So especially in the power run game, you have your backside guard running around from the other side and blocking the front side linebacker. In most basic terms, they're trying to get north and south right away. Like we're not messing around. We're not waiting for things to develop. We're getting north and south right away. And so what that's going to do is over time, as you start to wear on a defense and you start to get 3 yards, turns into 6 yards in the third quarter, turns into 7 yards in the fourth quarter, a defense, I mean, that wears on them, especially if you're a safety. Bobby Petrino kind of mentioned this. You don't want to come up and fill the run, especially in third or fourth quarter where you got to tackle Reuben Owens, at 10 yards and it's, just not fun. You don't want to do that. You want to go play coverage. And so after a while, after that happens enough times, you start to cheat. And when I say cheat, I mean pre-snap. Maybe you were at 10 yards before if you're a safety. Maybe you start to sneak up and play in like that 7-8 yard range. Heck, maybe you get greedy, get to 6 yards. And when that happens, you have so many weapons on the outside for Texas A&M. It's going to make for a lot more explosive plays, which I know A&M fans are excited about because at that point, we just need one guy to win, whether it's Moose Muhammad, whether it's Nia Smith, whether it's Evan Stewart. We just need somebody to win because that safety, with him creeping up and getting greedy, there's a lot of real estate, a lot of green grass behind him for us to throw to. So I think you feel encouraged about Connor Wegman as a whole with just straight up his ability and what you got to see from him at the end of the year. But just the way that this is going to, I think, make for an easier picture for him and a more digestible offense. I think it's gonna pay dividends.
JD, I know you're not Nostradamus, but they scored 22 points last year a game with a very pedestrian offense. We'd be happy to see 30, 31 points a game after,
Sure.
how close those games were. But what is realistic? Like, can this team be a 35-plus point per game team?
I don't think it's unrealistic by any stretch. I think I probably would lean towards that like 30 points a game number just because it may take a second to totally formulate. I think if I'm a Texas A&M fan, I really focus on, hey, what do we look like in late October, November? Because at that point, nobody that's, a first-year guy, quote unquote, you're not a first-year guy anymore. Like Connor Wegman's going to be a first-year starter when it comes to game one, having the full 12 games to work with, even though we started games last year. By, game 9, you're no longer, considered a 1 year or first-year guy. So I think at that point, the excuse for how much have we gelled and how much is our feet set in this offense, I think you kind of take away that excuse a little bit. And so I think 30 points a game and hopefully 35-ish points a game towards the second half of their schedule is what you'd be looking at. Because, David, you know this as well as anybody, the talent and the horsepower at Texas A&M isn't the problem. Like there's a lot of different teams across the country that would trade their kicker, a personnel staff guy, and the head coach's left arm to be able to have some of the personnel they have in that skill position room at the wide receiver position, especially over at their school. And so, it's an embarrassment of riches, I think, maximizing it is what's so appealing, what's so exciting about this spread power offense, or power spread offense rather, under Bobby Petrino. So I think it'll pay dividends. I think the second half of the year is really where I want to hone in on if I'm a Texas A&M fan.
Which is why that first half of the year is so important, to take care of the games that you have to take care of. And Miami comes up, Arkansas, Auburn. Those are all games that I think A&M should win. Unfortunately, in years past, the should wins don't always happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably part of, what will be interesting about Connor Wegman being, I know it hasn't been announced just yet, but you're assuming he's going to end up being the guy for you at Texas A&M. So the first half of the year, how he adjusts, how he handles, kind of I don't want to say turbulent waters, but he's going to be walking into, like you mentioned, some pretty big time spots as his first year being the guy. So how he handles those and how this offense around him makes his job easier is something that I'm really watching for. Because in theory, David, it really should do that. Like, no knock against Jimbo Fisher. He's had a tremendous career and really made his name being an offensive football coach. But this scheme as a whole is supposed to be more simplistic, more digestible, and just letting players play, like feeding the studs, kind of taking the governor off of, okay, do I have this assignment? Do I have that assignment? And taking the complexities out of it. And that's not to say that it's simplistic in the sense that it's easy to defend, but I think you make it simplistic so you just let your talented players be talented. You don't saddle a wild horse, you go let them run.
One of the teams that I mentioned there that we were talking about is Auburn. They chose Peyton Thorne as their starter. No surprise there. He joined late, but I think he's got the most experience, and I was not impressed with Robbie Ashford. That being said, he was really good when he had Kenneth Walker III. How important is the running game for him in this new offense with Hugh Freeze?
Oh, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. I mean, to stay in that whole X's and O's vein, Auburn and Hugh Freeze are going to run that RPO scheme. And I mean, if you're listening to this show, you've probably had a million different color commentators explain to you the run pass option. So I won't do that. But essentially, Hugh Freeze wants to run the football. Like, in the majority of his offensive plays for Peyton Thorne, there's going to be the option to either hand it off or to throw it. And so if you're not getting any success running the football, and I think they expect to have success running the football, hopefully they have Jarquez Hunter. Sounds like they're really excited about Damari Alston and what he's going to be for them. But if you don't have success running the football, then if I'm a linebacker, I don't have to honor that pass game, or I don't have to honor that run game. Rather, I can kind of just sit back and force you to try and figure it out in the run game. So an enormous part for him, just as a basic building block of what they want to do in that offense, his job is going to be drastically made easier if they can get some push up front. So I think they will. But again, Peyton Thorne being the starting quarterback. And David, I don't know about you, but I was fascinated at the timing of this because Peyton Thorne missed all of spring.
Right.
Like he missed the most important 15 practices. So I think it speaks volumes to how quickly he got up to speed.
JD, last thing for you. I think you said it more eloquently than I, but I think we agree here. The Deion thing, and by the way, I'm kind of tired of the whole act, but whatever. His act is who he is. He wasn't encouraging fighting. He was encouraging brotherhood and being a team. And that's the part that spoke to me. Of course, there was a camera in his face when he was doing it because, of course, it's Deion. But that being said, it wasn't about the fight, right?
No, and I think some people, it was very interesting, David. I think a lot of people kind of exposed themselves the other day saying he's encouraging fighting. That's bad for the game. He's going to get a kid hurt. It's like, okay, well, then you may not really have been paying attention to what's going on in Colorado and just the fact that they imported an entire new team through the transfer portal. And the other part that, that this happens in football, right? Like you don't see as much, footage of fights happening through, fall camp at the collegiate level because a lot of them are so closed off. We don't get any cameras, but I promise you there's fights happening across the country. We heard about one at LSU, but the way that he handled that, like you said, David, I was really impressed by that. And I think it showed a sense of self-awareness and a sense of awareness within his football team that, hey, I do have a group of totally new guys and we got to get on the same page from an X's and O standpoint. We got to get everybody up to speed, but even more so, like, we got to be a team. It's cool that we brought Travis Hunter here. It's cool that we got Shedeur Sanders and Jimmy Horn Jr. We got all these guys that have a ton of talent, but like, if y'all are not a team and you're just talented individuals, like, we are going to get ourselves worked Saturday in and Saturday out. So, I mean, what kind of dividends that pays long-term, I don't know. But like you said, I think the fact that he was encouraging, hey, have your guys back when something goes on. I'm not asking you to go and just throw a right hook and put out our starting safety for the year, but I'm telling you to go be involved and have your boys back when something's going down at practice. So I think it's a very encouraging sign if you're watching what's going on for Coach Prime in Colorado.
That is JD PicKell there from On3. JD, great stuff, man. We'll do it here in a couple of weeks, all right?
Hey, almost time, David. Almost time for some real ball to be played. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, brother. Take care.